They say the queue at Momati's Amala joint starts at 4 a.m. They say her stew can cure a broken heart and mend a failed business. They say one plate of her food will change your entire week. But nobody in Ikeja ever asks the one question that matters most. Where does the meat come from during the scarcity? Femi was not the kind of man who believed in miracles or spiritual food. He was a realist, a struggling graphic designer who had been eating gari and groundnut for 3 weeks straight because his clients refused to pay him. His stomach was constantly crying, and his wallet was completely empty. When his friend Bola told him about a cheap Amala spot in Ikeja where you could eat like a king for just 500 naira, Femi laughed and said it was probably dog meat. But hunger has a way of silencing pride, and by Thursday evening, he found himself standing in front of the famous blue gate with a faded sign that read, Momati's Kitchen. The queue was insane, even at 6 p.m. Men in expensive agbada stood next to Okada riders, and office workers in tight skirts waited patiently beside mechanics with oil-stained hands. Everyone was silent, staring forward with the same hungry, glazed look in their eyes. Femi noticed that nobody was talking or laughing. They just stood there, breathing in the thick, heavy aroma that poured out from the open courtyard. The smell was unlike anything he had ever experienced before. It was rich, smoky, and strangely sweet, like roasted meat mixed with something floral and ancient. It grabbed him by the throat and pulled him deeper into the queue. When he finally entered the compound, he saw her. Momati was a large woman with skin as dark as wet soil and eyes that never blinked. She sat on a high wooden stool behind 3 massive black pots, stirring the bubbling stew with a long iron ladle. Her wrapper was tied tight around her waist, and she wore no jewelry except for a single red bead around her thick neck. She did not greet anyone. She did not smile. She just scooped the amala and poured the thick, oily stew over it with the precision of someone performing a ritual. Her 2 assistants, both young girls with blank expressions, moved like shadows, serving the plates without making a single sound. Femi sat on a low bench and received his plate. The moment the aroma hit his nose up close, something switched off in his brain. He forgot about his unpaid invoices. He forgot about his landlord's threats. He forgot about everything except the need to eat. The first spoonful of amala entered his mouth, and he felt his entire body relax. The stew was thick, dark, and tasted like it had been cooked for days over a slow, patient fire. The meat was tender, almost too tender, falling apart before he could even chew it. It melted on his tongue, releasing flavors he could not name. By the time he finished the plate, Femi felt a warmth spreading through his chest that he had not felt since he was a child eating his grandmother's cooking. He went back the next day. And the day after that. And the day after that. By the second week, Femi had become one of the regulars. He no longer questioned why the queue started so early or why the food was so cheap. He just needed to eat there. It was as if his body had developed a new kind of hunger that only Momati's stew could satisfy. He began to notice strange things, but he ignored them because the food was too good to stop. He noticed that the staff never ate the food themselves. He noticed that Momati would sometimes stare at certain customers for too long, her eyes tracking them like a hawk watching a mouse. He noticed that the other customers seemed zoned out, chewing slowly with empty faces, almost like they were under a spell. One evening, as Femi walked toward the amala joint, he passed by a faded missing person poster taped to an electric pole. The face on the poster looked familiar, but he could not place it. The man was young, maybe in his 30s, wearing a white shirt and a very specific wristwatch with a thick gold strap and a square face. Femi stared at the poster for a moment, feeling a strange chill run down his spine, but his hunger pulled him forward. He entered the compound, collected his plate, and sat down to eat. Halfway through his meal, his spoon hit something hard at the bottom of the bowl. He assumed it was a bone and tried to scoop it out. But when he lifted it into the light, his heart stopped. It was not a bone. It was a piece of metal. A small, square, gold-plated watch face, still attached to a fragment of its strap. The same watch from the missing person poster. Femi's hands began to shake. He looked down into his bowl and saw tiny bits of fabric mixed into the stew. His stomach turned, and a cold sweat broke out across his forehead. He looked up slowly, and his eyes met Momati's across the crowded courtyard. She was staring directly at him. Her face was completely still, and her lips curled into the smallest, darkest smile he had ever seen. She raised one thick finger to her lips and made a slow shushing motion, her eyes never leaving his. The other customers continued eating, oblivious, their heads down, their mouths chewing in perfect, mindless rhythm. Femi stumbled out of the compound, his legs weak and his vision blurry. He ran to the nearest gutter and bent over, trying to vomit, but nothing came out. He gagged and coughed, but his stomach refused to release the food. Instead, the warmth in his chest grew stronger, spreading through his veins like thick oil. He could still taste the stew on his tongue. He could still smell it in his nose. And beneath the horror and the fear, a terrible realization began to settle into his mind. He was still hungry. Femi did not go back for 3 days. He locked himself in his room, drinking only water and trying to forget what he had seen. But the hunger grew. It was not a normal hunger. It was a deep, gnawing ache that made his bones feel hollow and his mind feel clouded. He dreamed about the stew every night, seeing the thick red oil and the tender, nameless meat. On the 4th day, he could not fight it anymore. He found himself walking toward the blue gate, his feet moving on their own, his heart pounding with shame and fear. When he arrived, the queue was longer than ever. And there, at the very front, was Momati, watching him with those unblinking eyes. She did not need to speak. She simply scooped a fresh plate of amla and poured the stew over it, her smile returning like a silent promise. Femi took the plate with trembling hands, tears running down his face, and sat down to eat. Because sometimes, the hunger is stronger than the fear. And sometimes, the price of satisfaction is a secret you can never escape.